today marks day 2 of the Judicial Service Commission interviews. Yesterday, Dr John Hlophe of the uMkhonto weSizwe party resigned from serving in the body. In a statement, the MK party says it's written to the National Assembly Speaker withdrawing Hlophe's nomination as one of the designated members to serve on the JSC. While for this discussion, we've roped in legal analyst Reitumetse Benedict Phiri to also weigh in on Hlophe's resignation. So Reitumetse, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. So quite an interesting turn of events very late in the afternoon yesterday. What do you make of the resignation of Dr Hlophe following, of course, all the court drama battles between the DA and the MK party? And do you think there's any strategic, it's maybe a strategic move on the MK's part?
Oh, good afternoon, and good afternoon to the listeners, or the viewers rather. I was certainly surprised to see that resignation come through yesterday, given the court processes that are underway. If you look at the review applications that have been brought against the designation of Mr. Hlophe or Dr. Hlophe to the JSC, you would have expected that the MK party would have at least seen that out, because at the end of that process, if a court finds that those designations are unlawful and should be set aside, then it really brings the question of the process of the JSC that we currently have into question, which we thought was the MK strategy all along. But now with Dr. Hlophe having resigned, there's a vacancy on the JSC, which will obviously have to be filled in accordance with the constitutional process for the designation of National Assembly members. I'm not sure what the strategy being employed here is, but we hear that this is to protect Dr. Hlophe and not have him involved in tarnishing the processes of the JSC. I think it stands without reason that for so long as Dr. Hlophe was participating in those JSC processes, while we had the Western Cape judgment or at least the review still to be undertaken, there would have been a question mark, but I would have expected that we would have seen that process to the end. It would have probably inured better to the MK's position.
Absolutely. Now, MK party seemed to have based its decision to pull Hlophe's name from the JSC as a means to spare him from corruption links. Is this a loaded statement, you think? And what do they know that we are certainly not privy to at this stage?
I'm certainly not privy to what they know as well. And it is loaded because, it really begs the question, what could there be? What are these linkages that may have a bearing on him, firstly, as in his personal capacity, and secondly, on the work of the JSC? And I'm certainly very curious to find out what this may be subsequently or as the matter unfolds. But certainly, from strictly a legal perspective, that resignation was quite a surprise, given the unfolding of these legal processes and where they're likely to end up.
So, Reitumetse, just on that point of processes, now looking at the Constitution in accordance with section on Chapter 8 of the courts as well as administration, that clearly stipulates that 6 persons by the National Assembly members, of which 3 must be from the opposition party. So now, does Parliament then have to go through the electoral process again in order to field a replacement candidate from the MK?
Yes, that's certainly the case. Parliament will have to go again through the process and ensure that they designate a member from the official opposition as a member on the JSC. I think what's important to stress is that the work of the JSC does not stop, because the manner in which the resignation came about means that there's a vacancy on the JSC, and it's not a case of the JSC not being properly constituted, because there actually hasn't been a court at this particular point in time that has set aside Dr. Hlophe's designation. So, for all intents and purposes, the resignation was his work and the MK's work, rather than a failure of the National Assembly to designate the requisite number of people to the JSC in accordance with their constitutional obligations. So what we will then see is the National Assembly undertaking another process to designate a member from the official opposition to the JSC. I guess there will be questions now, since the Western Cape judgment is concerned, if there is a question on the probity or the ethics or bona fides of that person. I guess there will be a question, given the Western Cape judgment, of those questions having to be ventilated by Parliament before that designation is met, because that's essentially the effect of the Western Cape judgment, to say Parliament didn't even think or talk about John Hlophe's suitability to the JSC. And I guess the next process, we probably will have a debate around whoever will be designated and their suitability.
I'm sorry to cut you off there, Reitumetse. Unfortunately, I have to leave it there for this particular interview. But thank you so much for your insight this afternoon, Mr. Reitumetse Phiri, the legal analyst on the resignation of Dr. Hlophe from, of course, serving in the JSC.